Okay, so for today's setup guide, we are checking out Emu Deck for Windows. So I've covered Emu Deck for Windows very briefly last year, and here we go. We have got PCSX2 setup guide. And let me just remind you that Emu Deck for Windows is actually free right now. So in this setup guide, I'm going to be showing you how to download and install PCSX2 Emulator for Emu Deck for Windows. I'm going to be showing you how to use the emulator itself in multiple different ways outside of Emulation Station. I'm going to be going through controller settings, video settings, and various other things. So it's a fairly long video, but I'm going to aim to get you the very best experience with PCSX2, PlayStation 2, and Emu Deck. Check this one out. Okay then, before I start today's Emu Deck for Windows and PlayStation 2 PCSX2 setup guide, if you like what you see today, hit notifications, subscribe, and like so you don't miss upcoming retro emulation content which I upload on my channel once, maybe 3 times a day. Just means that you'll get little notifications pop up for every time I release a new setup guide. You might be interested in something. So also helps my channel a great deal too. So we're looking at PlayStation 2 today for Emu Deck for Windows. And of course, Emu Deck for Windows is now free since December 2023. If you've not yet checked out how to set up Emu Deck for Windows, do check out my Emu Deck for Windows playlist. So let's get started with this. First of all, what we need to do is just open up Emu Deck. And what we're going to do once we're inside of Emu Deck is just go to Manage Emulators and just make sure that you downloaded PCSX2. Just left click on this one if you've not done it. And we're going to go to Install. And just let this install, won't take too long. Okay, so it's now been installed, so we're just going to close down this little window. Okie dokes. Next thing we need to do is we just minimize this for now. What we need to do is pop some games as well as some BIOS files into our directories. So I'm going to show you how to do this. First of all, if you're not sure which BIOS files you need, then you can check out the PCSX2 website or look on Google, and that will tell you very easily which BIOS files you need. And the games I'm going to be using for this are in .iso file extension. So I've got R-Type Final and I've also got SX Tricky classic games. So what I need to do with these two games is actually put them into the ROMs directory for Emu Deck. So to find the ROMs directory, if you set up Emu Deck for Windows using default settings, then quite likely it's going to be in your C drive. So what I'm going to do for now is just copy both of these games. And I'm going to go to this PC. Now, provided you installed Emu Deck for Windows with default settings, it's going to be in your C drive. And if we just scroll down, we're going to find a users folder. If we go in here, you'll then find a folder, which is the name of your computer. So it's Jamie in my case. If I go in here, I'm then going to find Emu Deck folder. And from here, I'm going to go into Emulation Station DE. Next up, we're just going to go down to ROMs all, and just here is the whole list of systems that we can add games or ROMs to. So obviously in this case, we're going to go down to PS2 and open up PS2, and this is where you can paste or copy your PlayStation 2 games. Next up, we're just going to go to Emulators, and from your Emulators folder, we're going to find PCSX2 QT, and this is what we just downloaded using Emu Deck. If we go inside here, what we need to do is just open up PCSX2 Emulator, and we need to open this up because we need to set some settings before we open this up with Emu Deck for Windows. So I'm going to open this executable up just there, double left click. Okie dokes, no games in supported formats were found. So what I'm going to do from here is go to Add Game Directory, and I need to point this into the same direction as my Emulation Station folder. I've just put my 2 PS2 games. So very simple to do. We're just going to go down to this PC again, C drive, and of course we're now going to be looking for that users folder, Jamie. And from here we're just going to scroll down and see Emu Deck. If we go in here, we're going to find Emulation Station DE, which is desktop edition. and ROMs. And if we scroll down, we're going to find that PS2 folder again. If I just highlight this, left click once and select folder. Would you like to scan the directory? Just press yes on this. Okie doke, so our games are now set up in PCSX2, as you can see. And we can actually change how this looks. Just click on this button here. But anyways, what we need to do next is actually put our BIOS files in place. So to do this, we're going to go to settings. We're going to go down to BIOS. What you're going to see just here is that we got a directory which is C drive emulation BIOS. Now, if you've got your BIOS files anywhere else, then you're obviously going to need to go to browse and you need to point this to where your BIOS files are located. What this is telling me is that it's going to look for the BIOS files in C drive emulation BIOS. So what I'm going to do is just come out of this. I've got my BIOS files. Here's my BIOS files for PS2. I'm going to just make a copy of these. And what the emulator just told us is that I need to pop these into my C drive, into my emulation folder, and finally into my BIOS folder. If I then right click and paste those BIOS files, and if I come out and go back into the PS2 emulator, what I'm going to do is now just press reset and press yes. And here we go. So here's my BIOS files and they are now installed into PCSX2. Awesome stuff. So what I do suggest doing next is just closing this down. And what we're going to do is open up our game within Emulation Station or Emu Deck. So let's just go over to Steam and we're going to launch Emulation Station. Let's just press play. And here we go. So we've now got PS2 within Emu Deck for Windows. And here's both my games. So first things first, let's just actually scrape some artwork for these games. So I'm going to press start, scraper, scrape these systems, and I just need to check Sony PlayStation 2. If I then go to press back, I'm going to make sure scrape from is set to screen scraper. Account settings, just make sure you pop in your username and password. And then if we go down to content settings, you can then select what type of artwork you want. I'm then going to go down to start and just let scraping begin. Okay, 2 games successfully scraped. If I just press OK on this and come back out and out again, what I need to do next is make sure that when we boot PlayStation 2 games using Emulation Station, we need to make sure that it's booted from the emulator that we just installed and downloaded. If we go to main menu for this, down to other settings, alternative emulators, and from here for PS2, what I need to do is select the correct one. I then try and boot up a game. And here we go, we're in. As we can see, that's working just fine. So what we can do next is actually play around with video settings. So what I suggest doing It says closing out of Emulation Station. So main menu, quit ESDE, and yes. Okay, so before we take a look at video settings and how to make PS2 games look much better than what they originally looked, what I'm going to do is just suggest funking up PCSX2 Emulator itself. From time to time, you might not fancy using Emu Deck or Emulation Station for PlayStation 2 games, so for that case, we can actually go directly into the PCSX2 Emulator and just boot up our games from here. So let's just funk this up. So what we can actually do, like I said just now, is if we go to this icon just here, we can actually get images for these. For example, if I right click on here, we can go to set cover image. So what I'm going to do is just show you how to do this as an example. So I'm going to just go and type in R-type PS2 into Google, and here's an image for the game. So I'm going to just right click on the image, save the image as. Now what I'm going to do is just as an example for this setup guide, just to show you how to do this, I'm going to go to my desktop and create a new folder on my desktop. And you can create this folder anywhere. And what I personally suggest doing is putting this into your Emu Deck directory. But like I say, this is just to get you going. So what I'm going to do next is just save that R-type game image cover into that images folder I've just created. And what I need to do next in order to make this appear in PCSX2, all I need to do is just right click on the game I've got the image artwork for. And I'm going to go down to set cover image. And then desktop, and I'm going to search for that images folder that I've just created. Open, and here's my artwork. Open, and here we go. And of course we can do this for any game we want as long as you've got the images and it's in JPEG. So again, what I'm going to do is just go to Google Images and type in SSX Tricky, and just an example, let's just see if we can grab this platinum version of it. So save image as, and here we go. So again, I'm going to just save that into that folder I've created, images, and just save it in there. And then of course I'll go through the same process again by just right clicking on SSX Tricky and go down to set cover image, and here it is. Open. Cool. So I've got a nice shiny platinum artwork to go with this. Now next up, what I am going to tell you is that we can actually use retro achievements too in PCSX2. Retro achievements is a little system which is free, where you hit certain points of a game, you'll literally get retro achievements. So if I just go back over to my web browser, here's retro achievements. All you need to do is sign up. It's absolutely free, and there's a very good community here. I made a video on retro achievements, what it's all about, a little while back, so you might be interested in looking at that. So what we're going to do in order to enable retro achievements in PCSX2, if we just go to settings, we're going to go down to achievements. And from here, just make sure to check enable achievements. And you've got all these options here: enable hardcore mode, enable spectator mode. But what we need to do is actually log in. So once you've signed up with retro achievements, you'll have your login and your password. Just pop it in there, log in, and you are done. And then you'll start earning retro achievements for certain games. So next up, what I am going to suggest, whilst we're in settings just here, we're going to go to graphics. Now this is where we can improve games. So at the moment, render is on automatic. Now if you find a game doesn't display, is maybe a black screen, then guaranteed it's going to be something still with your render software or whatever. So automatic default normally works fine. If this isn't the case for you, then you might consider using something like Vulkan or OpenGL. I'm going to leave it on automatic. Adapter, I'm going to just check on my graphics card, which is the RTX 3050. Aspect ratio. Now, if we drop this down, most games, probably 97-98% of PS2 games were designed for 4:3, which is a boxed aspect ratio. We can put this to 16:9. Trouble is then your games will look very stretched in some cases. Personally, if you want a good experience, I would go to how it was left. We also got bilinear filtering, where we can smooth and sharp the image, but I'll leave that up to you. And just be mindful that if you've got a potato computer, then applying some of these settings will cause strain on your computer, and you might see some lag as well. Now, just here at the bottom, we got VSync. I suggest turning this one on, just enable that. What this one does is disables screen tear. So it takes away screen tear, and that's something which is very important for 3D games. Now, the next option I'm going to go to is the rendering tab, and this is where you can really make your PS2 games look awesome. Internal resolution, if I drop this down, now technically we can go up to 4K internal resolution, but I'll be honest with you, my laptop, which is a very good gaming laptop, can struggle from time to time. It's a 4K internal resolution. If you leave this to native, you're going to get obviously the original quality of how a PS2 game would look. If you go up to 720p or even a cheap 1080p, it's a massive difference. For this, I'm going to just go to 2x native 720p, which is still, like I say, a massive upgrade. Next up, we got texture filtering. So again, this is going to add some filters to your games just to improve visuals, that type of thing. So this is worth experimenting with. Next up, we got anisotropic filtering. Now, what this is going to do is, again, it's going to improve visuals. So it's going to take away some pixelation. And just like internal resolution, if you crack this right up to say 8 to 16 times, if you've got a lower end, weaker computer, then you're really going to see some lag. So if I just pop this to 2 times, and there's various different options, but really a lot of this you can experiment with. Now, if we just go to interface, when we launch games, we can actually uncheck start full screen. So if you want to start a PS2 game as a window mode, then what you need to do is uncheck start full screen. So obviously if you want it to open in a full screen mode, then just be sure to check this one. And whilst we're under interface, what I'm always going to suggest doing is keeping PCSX2 up to date. And you can do this just by checking for updates. Now, as we can see, I'm using the latest version, so there's no updates right now. Now, if I open up my R-Type game from within PCSX2, we should see some visual enhancements with those settings that I've set. Okay, so let's actually test this now through Emulation Station. If I go back to Steam and play Emulation Station.
EA Sports. Big.
Welcome. Setup. Select.
The sparkly. No. Go. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Cross Out. You're welcome to Garibaldi. Oh yeah. Oh yeah! Sweet big air opponent.
You're such stuff as dreams are made of. Let me see you smile.
I need a vacation.
Method.
Wow!
Once again. Perfect.
The word of the day is ow!
And there we go, so video settings have now been applied to that too. Awesome. Okay, so just going back to video settings, I showed you just a minute ago how to configure video settings. It's general, but we can actually do this per game. So if I was to say right click on SSX Tricky, if I go to properties, from here we're going to get the same options as we did just a minute ago just by going to settings. But this is going to allow us to change per game. So for example, if I was to go down to graphics from here, I can then actually set up SSX Tricky to how I want it to. So for example, if I go to aspect ratio and put this one back to say auto standard, and I check VSync and check integer scaling, if I then go to close, then this means that SSX Tricky is going to have those video settings. Now if I go to R-Type and again properties, I can then go to graphics and actually set this one up as something completely different. So for example, I can leave this one on to widescreen 16:9 and I can do whatever I want to do it from here. Okay, so next up, I'm going to talk to you about controller settings. Now, PCSX2 is a very good system for automatically mapping out controllers. I've used it in past setup guides with my Google Stadia controller, which I'm currently using, an Xbox controller and a PS3 controller, and each time it's automatically configured it for me. But if there's a reason you need to map it out, then you can easily do this by going to settings, controllers. If we drop down one to controller port 1 DualShock 2, you can then map out your controller. So like I say, by default, this has already mapped it out for me. But if I did need to reconfigure it or remap it, then it's literally just a case of left clicking on each one of these buttons. So say D-pad, I'm going to press up on my D-pad and down on my D-pad. We can also make new profiles. So if we want to make a new profile to have a completely different configuration altogether, but keep this one, we're just going to go to new profile and then name of new profile, just type anything in here, go to OK. And if we select no on create input profile, just here, if we go back to controller port 1 DualShock 2, as you can see, everything's now blank and this is an absolutely brand new profile. And we've also got the automatic profile still set up. So for example, if I want to map this one out, let's just say D-pad, I'm actually going to use my left analog stick to press up. As we can see, this is now mapping. Then obviously just go down to close, and if you want to go back, then just go back to settings, controllers, and if we go down to load profile, you're going to find just here we can load back that Just Jamie profile that I've just created, so press yes. And if we go back to controller port 1 DualShock 2, you'll there find that profile that I've just saved. But very briefly, going back to cover creation to make things look nicer in PCSX2, there is a way you can actually automatically download cover art for you, but you need to enter in your own website address for this. But if you want to do this, rather than manually did it like I did earlier, just go to Tools, Cover Downloader, and if you Google it, you'll easily find the address just here. But you put the address of the website here, and that's it. And then you're going to go to Use Serial File Names, and then just push on Start, and that's going to automatically download all your cover art for you. So what I'm going to show you how to do next is actually parsing PCSX2 to your Steam library. As we can see right now, if I go to my library, I don't have PCSX2 here at all, but we can actually add this to the Steam library. All you need to do is open up EmuDeck, so once Emu Deck is opened, what we're going to do is go to Steam ROM Manager. Now this is going to open up Steam ROM Manager, and underneath it we're going to see parsers. So what I'm going to do once we're inside of parsers is actually just turn this off so nothing is highlighted. And I'm just going to select emulators. And what I'm going to do from here is go to Add Games and Parse. So once this is open, this is going to show us all the emulators that I've got through Emu Deck. Now specifically, I'm looking to parse PCSX2 into my Steam library. So what we can do from here is if we left and right click, we can actually change images. So for this, I'm going to just go and select this one just here. And once I've selected the image, what I'm going to do next is go down to Save to Steam. and you're going to see do and batch at the top. And done adding remove entries. So if we just minimize this and we open up Steam again, you should then find in your Steam library, we have now got all of those emulators, including PCSX2, as you can see just here. So we can actually open up PCSX2 then, direct from the Steam library, or we can actually open it through the directory for Emu Deck, or of course we can use Emulation Station, so multi-purpose. If I just play it from here, and here we go, it's now booted us straight into PCSX2. And if I close out of this, I can then go to Emulation Station, and of course also launch it through here. And here we go. So other things we can do then once we're inside of Emulation Station is if you're planning on using PS2 with say a RetroArch core, just remember to go to other settings, alternative emulators, and if you're going to be using a RetroArch core for this, just select the core from here. But as you know from this setup guide, I'm using the PCSX2 standalone, so I'm going to just make sure that one's checked. So that's it for today's Emu Deck for Windows and PCSX2 PlayStation 2 setup guide. A lot of information in this video, but I've done it in your best interest to get you the best visuals. Even go as far as saying how to remap your controller if you want different controller mappings for this. So anyways, if you liked today's video, hit notifications, subscribe and like so you don't miss upcoming retro emulation content. And if this video was popular today, I'm very happy to do more setup guides for Emu Deck for Windows. So anyways, join me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and TikTok. But until next time, stay retro.